Apparently, if you want to see some really weird stuff, just head on over to Ohio. The strange urban legends, the cryptid and UFO sightings and hauntings that have come out of this state are abundant. So let's dive right in, shall we? We're going to start off the list with a recent UFO sighting in Middletown. So in June of 2023, a number of residents reported seeing strange lights in the sky over town. The lights were in a circular formation, rotating. A man named Caden Little managed to capture the weird lights on video. We see them hovering in place, rotating in a counterclockwise direction before flying off at such an amazing speed that if you blink, it just looks like they vanish completely. President of the Cincinnati Astronomical Society, Brian Simpson, looked at the footage, saying that the lights definitely weren't from a drone based on the speed at which they flew out of sight. I think this is a pretty cool piece of footage, but what do you guys think? Genuine? Hoax? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. And while you're at it, why not hit that subscribe button as well? Here's a creepy piece of footage from TikTok. A couple was hiking at night in Ohio when they pulled out their camera to film this pair of eyes peeking out at them from the tree line. At first, they thought it was a deer, but at one point they realized it really doesn't seem to be a deer. Something about the way the eyes are moving and the fact that deers rarely decide to follow people. I really want nothing to do with human beings. So it becomes pretty clear that there's something else tailing them. Now, we never get to see the creature in full. It lurks in the shadows the entire time, but some commenters have said it kind of moves like a big cat. Others have commented it could be the Ohio grassman or dogman. Whether this was a cryptid or a predatory animal, either would be terrifying. Eventually, the couple wisely decides to hurry out of there. The small village of Sabina once had something of a mascot, a very macabre mascot. It was a mummy. So in 1929, an African-American man in his mid to late 40s was found dead on a road near Sabina. No ID, just $1.40 in cash and a scrap of paper with an address that turned out to be a vacant lot in Cincinnati. The authorities had no idea who this guy was, so they went with the name Eugene. Eugene the mummy was taken to Sabina's Littleton funeral home and embalmed. They put him in a brick shed by a bus stop, thinking maybe someone would recognize him during the 30-day viewing period. But no luck. Folks in Sabina got kind of attached to their new resident, though. They cleaned him up, they changed his clothes. Things got really weird, though, when local kids started playing with him and moving him around, even swiping his gold teeth. Teenagers would even take the poor guy out on joyrides. The mummy ended up being taken to Ohio State University and was placed on a bench outside the school to scare students. The Littleton funeral home got wind of this, and Eugene was sent back to Sabina, and at this point it was clear the guy needed to be buried. Eugene got a plot in the local cemetery, complete with a stone that says he was found dead in 1929, buried 1964. His identity is still a complete mystery. Next up, we have the case of the Peninsula Python. I think this is one of my favorite stories to come out of Ohio. It's not often that a massive-sized wild python ends up roaming through a middle American state, but in one magical summer in Ohio, that's exactly what happened. In the summer of 1944, something strange happened in Summit County, Ohio, near the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. People started reporting sightings of a massive python about 15 feet long and incredibly thick. Now, at first, authorities didn't take these reports seriously, thinking it might be a hoax or some kind of wild exaggeration. As it turned out, though, what could have gone down as just another one of Ohio's many urban legends turned out to actually be very real. The residents were not making it up. Somehow a large python was let loose. No one could explain how the snake ended up in Ohio, but there it was. During that summer, the residents were terrified as the enormous snake roamed through farms, leaving behind indentations the size of giant tires. To make matters worse, the python even attacked livestock. I mean, of course it did, right? Authorities spent the whole summer hunting this thing down, but it was never found. It just disappeared eventually. Most likely it died from exposure during the harsh Ohio winter. Next up is the Crosswick monster case. This was a very well-documented case at the time, and is one of the strangest stories ever to come out of the state of Ohio. Just saying a lot. So in 1882, two boys, Ed and Joe Lynch, had a really terrifying encounter with a strange creature in a field. They heard strange noises from tall grass, and before they could react, they said they saw this large lizard-like beast with 4 legs come out of them. The creature approached the two, grabbed Ed in its jaws, and started dragging him towards a hollowed-out tree. Ed's screams ended up catching the attention of nearby men who rushed over to help. They managed to rescue Ed, but he was injured. After the incident, 60 men armed themselves with axes and clubs, and they formed a posse to hunt down this thing. They caught up with it, and the creature then stood on its hind legs. The chase led them to a hill of rocks where the creature escaped into a hole, never to be seen again. The local newspaper reported the story at the time, and it's since become a staple of Ohio's folklore. And I could see why. I mean, a lot of folks saw this thing that day. The exact nature of the creature, still a total mystery. So yeah, I don't know. I just love that story. Anytime there's like multiple people who see something, that just it makes it far more interesting for me. Next is another UFO case. This is the Trumbull County incident. This was a series of events where numerous residents reported seeing these unusual lights in the sky. Even police officers reported seeing things. Multiple residents reported sightings of odd lights in the night sky, describing them as bright and unusual aerial activities. Officer Toby Maloro was on duty that night. He was dispatched to investigate reported lights, and he was driving closer and closer to the source of these lights, keeping contact with the dispatcher, describing what he saw in real time. And at one point, radio communication was suddenly cut off, and his vehicle stopped. Maloro then became engulfed in a bright light from above. He got out of his vehicle for some reason to get a better view and reported seeing this massive circular object hovering in the sky. One of the strangest parts about his description of these events is that even though this thing was massive, it was almost completely silent. After a period of time, the object began to move away, and just as the craft moved off, his car and radio started working again. It's a pretty fascinating case, not just because of the detailed account made by Officer Malero, but all the corroborating reports from other residents as well. Now, a corroborated UFO case is one thing, but mass amounts of people frantically phoning into the police claiming to witness a large mutated octopus man, that is a whole other story. Very wild case right here. So the Octoman case, this unfolded on the 29th of January, 1959 in Cincinnati. It was a series of reports to the local cops about a bizarre octopus-like creature. The first report came from a man who urgently contacted police. He had a hard time describing what he was seeing because no one's ever seen a mutated octopus man before. And then a truck driver phoned up saying he'd encountered an unusual creature while driving into Cincinnati. Reports then just kept flooding in. The common thread with these calls is that people apparently sounded genuinely distressed. The creature was described as very large and had grayish skin, tentacle-like appendages, and a lopsided chest. Not sure exactly what that means, but I don't know, just maybe kind of like hunchback kind of. One witness provided a more detailed account, stating it was large, not a dog or a cat. It leaped in front of my car on 2 legs and was taller than the auto. When I looked back in my mirror, it was moving along the bridge rail. It was 3 or 4 times the size of a man and much bulkier. I have an eye and mind for dimensions, and I know it was huge. If I ever had the opportunity to go back in time, like forget going to Woodstock or anything like that, I'd just be like, take me to Cincinnati, Ohio, January 29th, 1959. I just want to know what everyone saw that night. Like, was it just a guy with a horrible deformity? Was there just something weird in the air that night? Or was there a freaking octopus creature roaming around that bridge? I desperately want to know. The Cedar Bog Monster. So the Cedar Bog Monster is just one of Ohio's many variations of Bigfoot. Back in the 50s, people started spreading stories about a creature hanging out in the Cedar Bog Nature Preserve. It was described as a large, hairy figure standing around 7 feet tall, with eyes that shined in the dark, and a not-so-pleasant odor. One of the most famous sightings was from a couple who had parked near the bog. they spotted the huge hairy creature strolling along Woodburn Road, which runs right beside the bog. They hightailed it out of there, of course, and reported the incident to the police. And there would be more and more accounts being reported. People started saying they were hearing strange noises in the woods, like grunts and howls. Some would find massive-sized footprints. Local news even featured the Cedar Bog monster in a headline. Now, what I wonder is, if this thing really did exist, is it a different creature than the Grassman and Orange Eyes and like all these other big hairy creatures roaming around Ohio? Or are these folks seeing the same creature or species of creature? These are the important questions you have to ask yourself. Another one of Ohio's strangest cases is the Werewolf of Defiance sightings. So in the summer of 1972, on the Norfolk and Western Railway in Defiance, two railroad workers, Ted Davis and Tom Jones, experienced a bizarre and unsettling event that would later be dubbed the Werewolf of Defiance case. It all began with Ted Davis, who, while working away on the railroad, saw something otherworldly. He reported seeing a large wolf-like creature. The creature actually held a wooden board in its paws, and without warning, it swung the board, striking Ted squarely on the shoulder. The creature then hastily retreated into the bushes like a coward. 5 days later, Ted and his coworker, Tom Jones, returned to the railway for another day of work. For some reason, they didn't quit after that first encounter. Sure enough, the creature shows up again, and this time it was actually a safe distance away from the two, and Ted and Tom then reported their encounters to the local police. Little did they know that their report was just the beginning of a wave of Wolfman sightings in the area. Other reports started flooding in, each detailing sightings of this menacing wolf monster, but reports started to trickle out by the end of that summer. So, did people hear about that first report and just want attention? Was the whole thing a big hoax? Once again, I'd really love to go back in time and just hide by that railway to watch the whole thing play out. Finally, we have the case of the Minerva monster. Back in 1978, folks in Minerva started talking about a hairy creature running around in the woods. A big, hairy, unknown beast. People claimed it was about 7 feet tall, had reddish-brown hair, and looked like a giant ape. Yes, another giant ape in Ohio. There are many. It all started when the Caton family saw this monster near a gravel pit outside their house, and they saw it on more than one occasion. One night they saw it peering at them through their window. It would also hurl rocks at their home. A real awful creature. It scared the living daylights out of them. Of course, they even said it smelled bad, like a mix of skunk and a wet dog. Not exactly a pleasant combo. Authorities were contacted and they came to investigate, but all that was left behind were large footprints around the family's property, leading back into the woods. A number of other residents also made reports about a similar creature around the same time, including the Caton's neighbor. It's still a complete mystery, though, as to what this thing was. The Grand Canyon, one of the most beautiful places in the world, I have to believe. Also some very mysterious stuff going on here.
Let's get into it. Starting off our list today, we have the Great Unconformity, a strange geological phenomenon which has left scientists baffled for decades. You see, the Grand Canyon was formed over millions of years as the Colorado River cut through the Colorado Plateau, eroding the plateau, which is made up of 3 main rock layer sets, which each contain various layers of sediment within them. Each small layer in the walls of the canyon can be dated, and for the most part it's pretty consistent, until of course the Proterozoic layer suddenly jumps to meet the layer formed from the Tappets sandstone. There is a unconformity between the two, and by that I mean that the Proterozoic layer, also known as the ancient Vishnu schist, dates back to over 1.7 billion years ago, and the next layer of sandstone only dates back to approximately 525 million years ago, meaning that there is a significant amount of rock layers missing from the geological record. And the missing layers represent a major part of Earth's history, so scientists cannot figure out a reason as to why they wouldn't be there. It's inexplicable and a total mystery.
One of the creepiest discoveries made in the Grand Canyon? Bones. Human bones. Something that happens pretty often, apparently. The amount of deaths that have happened here are almost impossible to count, let alone solve. all of these cases. There have been tons of human remains found in the Grand Canyon that have never been identified. And some have been identified, but the circumstances of their deaths have never been solved. In 2005, the Cold Case Squad was formed in Coconino County with the sole purpose of solving as many of these cases as they could. The members of the unit are all volunteers, having expertise in careers like the FBI, the Department of Public Safety Crime Lab, forensic nursing, crime scene investigations, National Park Service law enforcement, and more. And some of these cases they're looking into go all the way back to 1955.
From bones to no bones, another great mystery of the Grand Canyon, America's greatest canyon, is a distinct lack of not only rock layers but also dinosaur bones. That's right, despite its ancient origins, dinosaur bones have yet to be found within the rocks of the Grand Canyon. While at first this seems like it could possibly be one of the world's greatest mysteries, there is actually an explanation as to why no dinosaur fossils or bones exist in the area. And that is because while the canyon itself likely does not predate the dinosaurs, the rocks in which the canyon was carved from do. In fact, in some instances, the rocks in the canyon are billions of years older than the oldest recorded dinosaurs. So while the lack of dinosaur fossils isn't necessarily unexplainable, it's still pretty interesting.
Next up, we have the story of the cursed blanket. The story goes that in the spring of 1879, a trader named Don McGuire crossed the Colorado River on his way back to Utah. He'd been finishing up a trading trip in northern Arizona. At the ferry, he met a woman named Emma Lee, who was running the ferry. She needed some of McGuire's goods, and in exchange, she offered him a beautiful Navajo blanket. But according to her, the blanket had a bit of a dark history. Emma told him after they made their trade that her late husband's luck had taken a turn for the worse as soon as he got the blanket. Not sure why she'd say this after having just made a trade. Wouldn't really sell me on it, but I guess, a trade's a trade. It was too late. McGuire wasn't superstitious anyway, though, and didn't believe in any kind of curse. But in the end, McGuire would end up writing that the blanket was a, quote, curse to all who possess it. His luck started getting bad. He began chronicling all his bad fortune, writing that he had suffered, quote, 100 calamities. But as soon as he lost the blanket, his bad luck seemed to stop. He ended up digging further into the history of the blanket and discovered it had been woven by a Navajo woman named Mariana, who had made it for a stranger who rode into town that she had fallen in love with. Only her daughter had also fallen in love with the man. The stranger didn't return either of their feelings though, and the daughter ended up dying, according to the tale, of a broken heart. In a form of revenge, Mariana ended up cursing the blanket, and 3 months later, the stranger's horse was found with an empty saddle, and the blanket was found hanging on a tree branch, stained red.
Next up, we have the fact that the bottom layer of the Grand Canyon, located just below the Proterozoic layer, is made up entirely of metamorphic basement rocks, which are rocks found in the common household basement. Just kidding. They are rocks classified by their igneous intrusions, which means that either magma or lava has either entered and cooled or cooled on top of previously formed rock. This layer of the canyon is referred to as Zoroaster granite. The reason for the existence of the metamorphic rock is the Unicaret volcanic field, which was the source of at least 150 lava flows that poured into the Grand Canyon. Pretty hot stuff.
The story of Robert Spangler is absolutely wild. How this guy got away with everything he did is pretty astonishing. Every woman who ended up marrying this guy mysteriously died. Mysteriously. One of which at the Grand Canyon. So on April 11th, 1993, Robert Spangler walked into a ranger station at the Grand Canyon to report that his wife, Donna Sundling, had fallen to her death. He said that they had paused to take a picture on the trail, and when he turned back, she was gone. Rangers found Sundling's body about 160 feet below the trail. Her death was ruled an accident. Spangler was never formally accused of causing it. Well, at least not for a while. But even though there was no way to definitively prove that Spangler was responsible for his wife's death, it was highly suspicious because 15 years prior to this, Spangler had another wife. and a family, all of whom were found dead in their suburban Denver home in 1978. Spangler had managed to make it look like his wife had killed their two youngsters before taking her own life. So after his third wife had accidentally fallen to her death, Spangler started contacting his second wife again, Sharon. She ended up moving back into his home in Colorado, and on October 2nd, 1994, Spangler claimed that he'd found Sharon unresponsive in their house next to a bottle of Tylenol. She died later that day, and Spangler just happened to receive a $20,000 payout from Sharon's life insurance policy after her death. In 2000, Spangler was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he ended up confessing to all his crimes, all except for Sharon. He admitted to killing his first family because he wanted a new life, and he pushed his third wife off a cliff because he was unhappy in his marriage, because apparently divorce doesn't exist. Anyway, in March of 2001, Robert Spangler was sentenced to life in prison for his crimes, but his cancer took him out 5 months later.
Next on our list today, we have the Hydes, or more accurately, the disappearance of Glenn and Bessie Hyde, who went missing in the fall of 1928. The pair were newlyweds, hoping to run the rapids of the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon in Arizona, making Bessie Hyde the first woman to accomplish the feat. Unfortunately, that never happened, because on December 19th of 1928, the couple's boat was found abandoned, floating upright and fully stocked in the river. The pair had been seen and photographed just a month prior to their boat turning up unmanned in the cold water of the canyon. They had been restocking on goods and supplies when Bessie was overheard wondering aloud if she would ever wear pretty shoes again. Well, there is no way of knowing if she ever did, because as far as conclusive evidence goes, the pair was never found. Although many years later, in 1971, a woman claiming to be Bessie Hyde stated that she had killed her husband Glenn in order to escape his tormenting behaviors. While there was some evidence to back up her claim, documents of Glenn's early life, which would have been pretty easily obtainable, and a weapon, the woman's story is widely deemed as just that, a story. The investigation of the Hyde's death led to the discovery of many bodies found within the Grand Canyon, but none of them actually belonged to the Hydes themselves. Theories about the Hyde's disappearance range from people believing them to have drowned in the river to believing that they were chopped apart by tribes living in the canyon. At this point, it's looking like we'll never really know.
Well, how could I not involve a big hairy ape monster on a list of scary discoveries? Yes, even the Grand Canyon is known for a mysterious creature. Arizona has its own version of Bigfoot, known as the Mogollon Monster, or simply the Arizona Bigfoot. Sightings have been reported all throughout the state, but the oldest report dates back to 1903 in the Grand Canyon. The Arizona Republican newspaper came out with a story about a man named I.W. Stevens, who'd had a horrifying encounter with a big hairy creature near the canyon. He described it as having, quote, long white hair and a matted beard that reached to his knees. It wore no clothing, and upon his talon-like fingers were claws at least 2 inches long. So he'd come across this bizarre creature drinking the BLOOD of 2 cougars, and when the creature spotted him, it threatened him with a club and, quote, screamed the wildest, most unearthly screech.
Next up, we have one of the deadliest airline disasters in American history, which somehow occurred directly over the Grand Canyon and cost the lives of 128 passengers. The freak accident occurred on the morning of June 30th in 1956. Just 1 hour after departing from the Los Angeles International Airport, United Airlines Flight 718 and Trans World Airlines Flight 2 collided in midair above the Grand Canyon. Both pilots had somehow veered off of their designated routes and ended up flying at the exact same altitude in the exact same space at the exact same time. The reasons behind the crash were listed as lack of communication, turbulent weather, and flight rules. However, given the large number of coincidences that led to the accident, the crash of Flight 718 and Flight 2 out of LA holds an air of undeniable mystery.
Finally, we have the Thunderbird, a creature from Native American folklore. Giant birds with 20-foot wingspans, creating lightning storms as they flap their powerful wings. There have been reports of massive-sized birds flying over Arizona, though, especially around the Grand Canyon, some in quite recent years. One of the most famous stories, though, dates back to the late 1800s, when two cowboys in Tombstone claimed to have shot down one of these massive birds. The story goes that the cowboys were riding through the desert when they spotted this enormous bird perched on a rocky outcrop. They fired at it, as cowboys do, and eventually they brought the bird down. They managed to transport it back to Tombstone, where it was then displayed in a local shop for everyone to gawk at for a while. Again, that's not the only story. Over the years, many people have reported seeing giant birds in the skies over Arizona. Some describe them as having feathers and resembling oversized condors, while other people have said they've seen what looks more like some sort of prehistoric creature, like a pterodactyl.
Deep in the heart of Louisiana, where the water whispers secrets and the fog clings to the ancient trees, the wetlands hide mysteries as dense as their thickets. From ancient cities entombed in mud to creatures that defy explanation, these swamps and marshes hold tales as murky as their waters. So grab your flashlight and let's peel back the layers of mystery in one of America's most haunting landscapes. We are starting off today with one of the most recent discoveries, and that is the fact that Louisiana's coastal wetlands are in deep trouble, according to a new study from Tulane University, which reveals a rapid rise in sea levels that's expected to wipe out 3/4 of these natural hurricane barriers within decades. Published in Nature Communications, the study shows that Louisiana has seen a kind of sea level surge in the past 13 years that we didn't expect to see until much later this century. As a result, nearly all of the state's coastal wetland sites are struggling to keep up, with about 90% of them drowning under the rising tides faster than they can grow. This spells trouble for Louisiana, which has already lost over 2,000 square miles of wetlands since 1932, making cities like New Orleans even more vulnerable to storms. Despite massive restoration efforts and billion-dollar projects to save them, the future looks very bleak for these crucial ecosystems that buffer storms, attract tourists, and provide habitats for wildlife. As the seas continue to rise, the study warns of a quote ecosystem collapse that could decimate these vital areas by 2070. Next up, we are talking about an ancient lost city. George Gella, a retired architect turned amateur archaeologist, has a wild theory about a bunch of granite stones found by fishermen near Louisiana's uninhabited Chandelier Islands, 50 miles east of New Orleans. He believes these stones are actually part of a 12,000-year-old lost city predating ancient civilizations like the Inca, Maya, and Aztec. After 44 visits to the site, Gella is convinced he's found the remains of a submerged city he calls Crescentis, complete with a pyramid that he claims is connected to the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. Local fishermen have long pulled up strange square rocks from the area, but granite isn't native to Louisiana or Mississippi, stirring curiosity and speculation. Gella, who has studied the site for nearly 50 years, even has underwater sonar images that he says show clear ruins, including a massive pyramid. Adding to the mystery, he reports a bizarre amount of electromagnetic energy around the pyramid, echoing tales of compasses going haywire, similar to the Bermuda Triangle. Though it kind of sounds like a plot from an adventure novel, many are of course skeptical of Gella's claims. Alternative explanations suggest the granite could be from old shipwrecks or dumped construction materials, and despite the skepticism, Gella's romantic vision of an ancient, hidden city captivates the imagination, but without any concrete proof, this lost city remains a mystery. Next up, we are talking about some ancient artifacts. In the deep woods of west central Louisiana, archaeologists have embarked on a delicate mission at a site in Vernon Parish within the Kisatchie National Forest. Here, they are unearthing stone tools, spear points, and pottery dating back 12,000 years, revealing a timeline of human activity up to the point of European contact. Discovered in 2003, the site was only recently exposed more widely due to hurricanes and looters, making the work of preservation even more urgent. Using hurricane relief funds, teams are now diligently working to protect this window into prehistoric life before it's further damaged or pilfered. Amidst the backdrop of hurricanes Laura and Delta, which uprooted trees and disturbed the soil, these archaeologists are racing against time to save and study these valuable artifacts, piecing together the rich history of the area's ancient inhabitants. Moving on down our list, we are talking about a skull piece. Okay, it truly doesn't get more mysterious than that. Back in 1985, a fragment of a human skull turned up near Lake Pontchartrain on the outskirts of New Orleans. Initially, all that the coroner could deduce was that it belonged to a woman aged between 25 and 35. Despite the efforts, the age of the bone remained a mystery due to the limitations of technology at that time. The bone languished unidentified for years, with a 2009 DNA test proving inconclusive, lacking enough DNA to match any records. It wasn't until the bone was re-examined with carbon-14 dating at a Florida lab that the true antiquity of the find was revealed. It dated back to between 1504 and 1634 BC, placing the woman in the late Archaic period, contemporary with inhabitants of the famed Poverty Point. More on that later. This startling revelation identified her as indigenous, likely from the same era and region as those at Poverty Point, one of the most significant archaeological sites in the US from that period. Following the discovery, the St. Tammany Parish Coroner's Office engaged with the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, consulting with the Choctaw Nation and United Huma Nation to respect and honor the life of this ancient woman. As Coroner Charles Preston aptly remarked, quote, "No coroner's case is ever closed." Speaking of Poverty Point, I just, gave it a good shout out in that one. What is this place? Well, Poverty Point, now a celebrated UNESCO World Heritage Site, truly stands out as one of Louisiana's archaeological crown jewels. So imagine this. Over 3,000 years ago, long before skyscrapers and smartphones, a pre-Columbian indigenous culture was busy crafting massive earthen mounds with nothing more than tools made from bone and stone. These mounds aren't just heaps of dirt, they are geometric marvels, laid out with incredible precision that could be daunting even with today's technology. The sheer scale and complexity of these structures hint at an advanced society that knew a thing or two about engineering and organization. What's even more fascinating is the mystery shrouding their origins. We're still piecing together how and why these ancient people built such monumental structures, making Poverty Point not only a testament to human ingenuity, but also a puzzle from the deep past. It's a breathtaking reminder of what ancient civilizations were capable of, and honestly, it is as mystifying as it is impressive. Next up, we're talking about an ancient bacteria. So imagine a bacterium so ancient it's been snoozing under a lake in Louisiana for millions of years, only to be rudely awakened during a drilling mishap. This isn't the start of a sci-fi movie, but a very real discovery under Lake Peigneur. Back in 1980, an oil rig, drilling blissfully, punched right through into a salt mine below the lake. This colossal blunder didn't just give engineers a bad day at the office, it also created a spectacular whirlpool that drained the lake like a bathtub, and then inadvertently stirred this age-old microbe from its slumber. This tiny organism, newly introduced to science, might just rewrite parts of what we know about life's resilience. The lake, once famous for its fishing and calm waters, is now a hotspot for those keen on the mysteries lurking in its depths. Isn't nature just full of surprises? I love that. Next up, we were talking about a lagoon creature. Okay, would it really be a list of mysterious discoveries without some weird creature lurking out there? The mystery of the New Orleans City Park has everyone talking. So one day, a woman named Kim and her kids are meandering through the sculpture garden when bam, they spot something slithering in the lagoon. It's not just your average fish story. This thing is serpent-like with scales and a flashy red tail that's making quite the scene just hanging out on the water's surface. Kim, who runs the preschool Early Partners, is so intrigued that she's turned it into a project, hunting through sea creatures books and coming up empty. Could this be the Loch Ness Monster's cousin chilling in New Orleans? I don't know. Everyone's got a theory. Internet sleuths are whispering about genetically modified carp, but who knows at this point. The park officials are now on the case, hoping to shed some light on the mysterious aquatic friend with help from experts. So, is it a freaky fish, a misplaced sea serpent, or something else entirely? Next up, we are talking about an ancient cypress forest. Imagine a world where massive woolly mammoths and towering saber-toothed tigers roamed. A scene right out of the Ice Age, set about 18,000 to 80,000 years ago. Back then, the Gulf Coast was a bit cooler, kind of like how Missouri or North Carolina feels today. As the sea levels dipped, more land popped up along the continental shelf, and that's when the bald cypress trees took root in what is now the northern Gulf of Mexico. But then, something dramatic happened that wiped out and buried these forests under layers of earth. Fast forward to 2004, when Hurricane Ivan stormed through, uncovering these ancient, waterlogged woods. Christine DeLong, a marine geologist and paleoclimatologist at LSU, got her hands on these submerged trees about 8 miles offshore, buried under 60 feet of water. Back in the lab, they tried radiocarbon dating the wood, but it was so old that they had to use alternative methods, finding that the forest dated back to the early stretches of the last ice age, between 42,000 and 74,000 years old. The climate back then was chillier, not just cooling gradually, but in abrupt drops that seemed to sync with sea level changes. In their 2015 and 2016 expeditions, DeLong's team also dug up 18 sediment cores from around the underwater forest site, unearthing not just sand and seashells, but also dark organic peat complete with roots and leaves and even seeds from plants like St. John's wort and rose mallow plants that normally belong on land and not under the sea. This peculiar finding hints at how these forests could have been swiftly submerged, perhaps by rising sea levels or a sudden influx of water from melting ice sheets, burying everything in sediment. This discovery isn't just a peek into a prehistoric world, it suggests that other ancient underwater cypress forests might be hiding along the Gulf Coast, preserved in time, waiting to tell us more about the planet's past climate shifts. Next on our list, we are talking about the Manchak Swamp Ghost. The Manchak Swamp in Louisiana is steeped in a spine-tingling legend that mixes history with a touch of the supernatural. The tale centers around Julia Brown, a voodoo priestess known to the local community. It's said that on her deathbed in 1915, she foretold doom for the town with a haunting song that predicted its demise. True enough, on the day of her funeral, a devastating hurricane swept through, obliterating the town and reinforcing the curse's chilling prophecy. This eerie coincidence has shrouded Manchak Swamp in a ghostly aura ever since. Even more intriguing, the swamp occasionally yields relics from that fateful day, bits and pieces of the past that float up from the depths, keeping the story of Julia Brown alive and adding an irresistible layer of mystery to the swamp's already foggy waters. So whether it's the lure of ghost stories or just the thrill of a good old-fashioned mystery, Manchak Swamp holds a special place in the lore of Louisiana's wetlands. And finally on our list today we have the Tunica treasure mounds. Constructed centuries ago by the Tunica Biloxi tribe, these mounds aren't just piles of earth, they are monumental achievements of architecture and engineering. The Tunica people managed to create these earthworks for ceremonial and burial purposes without any of the modern technology we take for granted today. No bulldozers, no cranes, just human hands and an intimate knowledge of the land. Digging into these mounds, archaeologists have unearthed a treasure trove of artifacts that would make any history buff's heart skip a beat. We're talking about pottery that could rival any modern art, tools crafted with such precision they're almost surgical, and jewelry that shows a level of craftsmanship that is seriously impressive. These finds are not just cool old things, they give us a sneak peek into the daily life and spiritual practices of the Tunica people people, showcasing their high skill levels and deep cultural significance. What's even more amazing, perhaps the most amazing, is that there's still so much mystery shrouding these mounds. Each excavation can potentially reveal new secrets, offering more clues about how the early inhabitants of Louisiana lived and what these mounds meant to them. It's a puzzle that's far from complete, and that's what makes the Tunica treasure mounds not just fascinating, but also a little bit magical. Who knows what discoveries await around the next shovel of earth?
There are so many discoveries that leave scientists baffled that it's hard to keep track of them all. But here are some found recently in Alaska that left scientists terrified. Starting off our list today, we have the mystery of the color-changing Alaskan rivers. In recent years, scientists have found themselves bewildered by the changes in their waterways, including the 451 kilometers 280 miles of the monumental Kobuk River twists and turns through the northwest Alaska. Scrambling to figure out just what the heck is going on and why not only have these waters started to turn orange, but why they have also experienced an extreme increase in acidity, the United States Geological Survey partnered with the National Park Service and the University of California, Davis and the University of Alaska, Anchorage, and Public Pacific University together have set out to map the extent of the contamination as well as its impact on the ecosystem and the cause of it all. While the large group of scientists found their work to be inconclusive, they did come up with a few good theories. The first being that rising temperatures in the Arctic, which has been warming at an alarming rate of almost 4 times faster than the rest of the world, has caused permafrost to begin to thaw in certain areas of the state, releasing iron that had previously been held within the ice. Another theory suggests that not only was the color change due to excess levels of iron, but also the presence of bacteria, reducing the oxidized iron into the soil, which upon contact with the oxygenated water turned a vibrant shade of orange and raised acidity levels to rival those of actual orange juice. Next up we have vampire fish rain. It's like that song Acid Rain, but instead of acid rain it's vampire fish falling from the sky. Now if you're starting to think I've lost my mind, let me explain. The sea lamprey, commonly referred to as the vampire fish, has been around since at least the 1800s, which is when it was first discovered. The jawless fish, which can grow up to 15 inches long, earned its nickname due to the fact that its mouth, which is ringed with many rows of sharp teeth, works as a suction cup, which allows it to attach and suck the blood of its prey along with other bodily fluids. So now that we know what they are, let's just imagine what would happen if they started falling from the sky in our lawns, roadways, parking lots, beaches, and more. Well, the people of Fairbanks, Alaska don't have to imagine, as in 2015, it actually happened. Over the span of about a week, the Alaskan Department of Fish and Game received several calls from the residents of the town claiming to have found the fish popping up in the most unlikely places. Now, some people have claimed this was due to seagulls scooping them up from the fresh waters and dropping them on land, but like there were a lot, and besides, vampire fish rain sounds way cooler anyways. Kushtaka is next on our list, also known as the land otter man. The creature, which many locals claim to have seen, is said to be a mythical shape-shifting being that has commonly been referred to in the legends told by the Tlingit peoples of the Pacific Northwest coast on North America. In some of the legends told, Kushtakas are described as monsters, cruel creatures who drag sailors to their deaths. However, other stories have depicted them as friendly and helping, with some even claiming that the creatures have often saved humans by freezing to death in the cold Alaskan climate. So it's a bit of a toss-up on this one. Are they good or are they bad? And are they even real? I'll leave that up to you guys to figure out. Coming up next, we have the Slide Cemetery, located in the Klondike Gold Rush National Park. It was a dark day when scientists discovered the graves of an estimated 48 to 100 people, it's unknown as the records weren't so great back then, who perished in what is now described as the darkest day in the Klondike Gold Rush history. On April 3rd of 1898, many Alaskan people took to the Chilkoot Trail in an effort to quickly reach the Klondike goldfields, but unfortunately a large number of them never never made it to the intended destination. It seems the deceased, filled with dreams of collecting riches, failed to heed the many warnings of weather concerns in the area, and as the aspiring gold collectors made their way up the steep trails, the wet spring weather and loose dirt and rock caused a 10-acre avalanche, ending the lives of many and turning what was once a booming gold town into a desolate and melancholy area of mourning. The cemetery stands today as a reminder of this dark day in history. Up next, we have Lady of the Lake, the discovery of which left scientists and historians baffled and disturbed. So if you're picturing some ghostly woman standing at the edge of the water with decrepit skin and strangly hair, whose presence is depicted in horror stories and folklore, well, you'd be wrong. The Lady of the Lake is actually an abandoned WB-29 bomber aircraft, tail number 4462214. The aircraft, which flew in the 1940s during World War II, was used to detect evidence of nuclear testing from the Soviet Union while flying back and forth between Alaska and Japan. Makes sense, but what doesn't is how the aircraft ended up in the lake. Its first confirmed appearance in its final watery resting place was in 1964, but whether or not it crashed there, which it does not appear to have done so, or if it was placed there, there are absolutely no records, so it just really remains a mystery. Next, we have the possible discovery of a supervolcano hiding just beneath the surface of the Alaskan islands. The question of the volcano's existence first arose on December 7th of 2022 when John Power, a geophysicist at the United States Geological Survey's Alaska Volcano Observatory, presented a study that showcased a wide crater with arc-shaped ridges and around a 426-foot depth, 130-meter hollow entryway, presumably the tip of the supervolcano, and he presented it to his peers at the American Geophysical Union. While the discovery has yet to be confirmed, there is a mountain of evidence to support the existence of the mega underwater volcano. Geographical data, as well as data collection from seismometers used to record micro-earthquakes around the islands, point heavily to the confirmation of the volcano's presence. At this point in time, scientists are determined to confirm what exactly lies beneath the surface of these waters around the Alaskan islands as quickly as they can, because with the discovery of the possible volcano being so new, we have little to no information on whether or not this thing could blow at any time. And up next, we have another possible appearance and swift disappearance of underground pyramids hidden within the earth of the Alaskan Triangle. The discovery was made after a United States Senator, Hale Boggs, along with his pilot, Nick Begich, were flying over a part of Alaska commonly referred to as the Alaskan Triangle, known for its strange energy and high disappearance rate. As you might have guessed, both Senator and pilot disappeared, but that's not even the weirdest part. A survey of the area took place in an attempt to locate the missing persons, but instead found evidence of a pyramid-shaped major underground structure. However, when they went back to confirm their discovery, it was as though the pyramid had completely disappeared. There are many theories about the commonly referred to Dark Pyramid, the most popular being that it is an alien pyramid, heavily guarded by the United States government, and some people even believing that the pyramid has special powers, such as the ability to generate enough electricity to power all of Canada. But what do you guys think it is? Let me know in the comments, because I really love a good conspiracy theory. And starting off our top three, we have disappearances in the Alaskan Triangle, which of course was briefly mentioned in our last point, but let's dive a little bit deeper, because since 1988 there has actually been a recorded total of 16,000 disappearances in the area that lies between the lines of Anchorage, Juneau, and Uktuksoy. Of course, Boggs and Begich being among the missing. No one can figure out why this specific area has caused so much confusion and turmoil. Of course, there are many theories, the presence of the Dark Pyramid being one of them, rough terrain being another, and possible magnetic disturbances as well. But the crazy part is that it's not just planes that disappear when entering this particular triangle-shaped portion of Alaska. Reports of alleged kidnappings, getting lost in the woods, sudden vanishings, and being buried by snow are by in no means of short supply. scientists still can't seem to figure out what it is about this specific area that makes planes and people act so out of whack. Next, we have the petroglyph rocks found amongst the shores of Wrangell, an island town in part of Alaska's Inside Passage. For those wondering, a petroglyph is basically just a picture carved into a stone used to represent stories and knowledge, and if you'd like to see one, well, Alaska's got a bunch. While scientists argue over the purpose of the rocks, they have agreed that they were most likely created anywhere from 8,000 to 10,000 years ago, most likely by the native peoples that resided there at the time. But seeing as the depictions carved into some of the massive stones very closely mirror images of crop circles and other alien symbols, along with the fact that even after thousands of years the markings still remain so deep within the rock, the theory of the petroglyphs occurrence being a result of extraterrestrial artwork can't be ruled out. Not to mention, Alaska is also home to a giant underground pyramid, I'm just saying. And coming in at our number 1 spot, we have the golden egg. Okay, this one is super cool to me because it was found in the ocean, and I'm always on the lookout for new aquatic discoveries, which, by the way, if you've seen any recently, please let me know in the comments. But anyways, the flesh-like golden egg was recently discovered in August 30th of 2023, and this thing is weird. Found in the depths of the Alaskan seafloor, marine scientists are absolutely stumped as to what this thing could be, but many have speculated that it is most likely the egg casing of a new, unknown creature. On a live stream, one of the scientists noted that the egg had a hole in it, saying that meant something had either tried to get in or out. Another one of the marine spectators noted that when our collective knowledge can't identify it, it's something weird, adding, what kind of animal could make an egg casing like that? The team of researchers was able to successfully collect the intriguing item from the seafloor and bring it to the surface, and have so far confirmed that the golden flesh-like egg is in fact of biological origin, meaning it's not just some prop or piece of trash, but they have yet to truly identify the strange discovery.
Some things scientists can't even explain, and that is scary. So let's take a look at some of the darkest discoveries made in North America. First off, we have the Bridgewater Triangle. The Bridgewater Triangle is an area about 200 square miles of southeastern Massachusetts, and there's allegedly been just some weird stuff going on there. There have been asylums here, prisons here, there have been cult deaths, there have been all kind of human activity, UFO sightings, Bigfoot sightings, strange serpents, will of the wisps, glowing balls of light, hauntings. I think these stories are not only connected to us, to our past, but to our region and to each other, an author from the area said. Yep, you heard that right, but that's not all that happens there. Giant birds or pterodactyl-like flying creatures with wingspans up to 12 feet are claimed to have been seen there. Now there are also the Native American curses. According to one story, Native Americans had cursed the swamp centuries ago because of conflict with colonial settlers. A revered object of the Wampanoag people was lost during King Philip's War. Legend says that the area owes its paranormal unrest to the fact that this belt was lost from the native people. Now, why do all these things happen at this location? People have no clue, but there's definitely something weird going on here for sure. Next up is the Mexican Altiplano metal balls. Hundreds of strange metallic-looking spheres of unknown origin and purpose have been discovered by archaeologists exploring the ruins of ancient Mesoamerican temple in Mexico. The spheres were uncovered by camera equipment robotic exploration rover on the floor of 2 previous sealed underground chambers in the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. Now they are thought to be at least 1,800 years old and are about 1.5 to 5 inches in size. Their cores are made up of clay and other unknown organic materials, while their surfaces are covered in pyrite, also known as fool's gold, giving them a sparkly yellow coating. Now these spheres are thought to be offerings of some kind, as the temple was used by priests, but for now no one can establish their function because it is an unprecedented discovery, said archaeologist George Zalva. Moving on to the Centralia fire. The Centralia mine fire is a cold steam fire which has been burning in the labyrinth of abandoned coal mines underneath the borough of Centralia, Pennsylvania since at least May 27th, 1962. Yeah, a fire burning that long, it does not sound too good. It is burning at depths of up to 300 feet over an 8-mile stretch of 3,700 acres. Now at its current rate, it can continue to burn for over 250 150 years. When the fire first started, sulfurous fumes and carbon monoxide began seeping out of the ground, nearly suffocating some of the residents in their homes. Now, even more scary, the fire weakened the ground and it left it prone to sinkholes. Due to the fire in the 1980s, Centralia was mostly abandoned. There were 1,500 residents at the time the fire is believed to have started, but as of 2017, it had a population of 5, and most of the buildings had been demolished. Yeah, I don't know why anyone would still want to live there, but the fact that this fire could happen and there's no way to stop it is just so scary. Then there's the Georgia Guidestones. Located in Elbert County, Georgia, these granite monuments called the Georgia Guidestones were huge granite stones inscribed with words of advice that the author intended to guide humanity forward. Now, the creator wanted the stones to function as a compass, calendar, and clock. Meant to rival Stonehenge, R.C. Christian thought the Georgia Guidestones were superior because they had a message to communicate. The following inscriptions were sandblasted deep into the granite: maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature, guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity, unite humanity with a living new language, rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things tempered reason, protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts, let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court, avoid petty laws and useless officials, balance personal rights with social duties, prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite, and be not a cancer on earth, leave room for nature, leave room for nature. Now, the Guidestones were written in 8 different languages across 6 granite slabs. They were meant to serve as a guide for humanity in the world following a social, nuclear, or economic calamity. Now we have the unexplained lights of the Marfa. For more than 135 years, people have reported strange lights above the horizon in Marfa, Texas. No one knows exactly what they are, and that makes them both exciting and terrifying. Now, the first sighting was in 1883 when a young cowhand named Robert Reed Elson saw a mysterious dancing light as he was driving his cattle through the plain. Since then, pretty much everyone has reported seeing the pulsating, colorful balls of light along an uninhabitable stretch of prairie southeast of Marfa known as the Pasano Pass. Now, there's no way to predict when or where the lights will appear, but the glowing orbs generally form fewer than 30 times a year, usually just after the sun sets or rises. Now, some say the lights are roughly the size of basketballs and dart widely across the desert or hover as they pulsate. Others say the spheres appear colored as they twinkle in the distance. Sometimes they're red, other times they're blue, yellow, or white. Often, a second orb will appear to split, merge, float, or melt into the first, and I just need to know, what are these things? Now let's talk about the Devil's Tramping Ground. In North Carolina, there lies a barren circle of earth where nothing grows, believed by some to be cursed by the devil himself. It's alleged that the devil tramps and haunts a barren circle of ground in which nothing is supposed to grow. Legends about the ring are well known in local communities. These include the disappearance of objects left within the ring overnight, dogs freak out not wanting to go near it, and strange events occur to those who spend the night within its boundaries. Now, it has been alleged that nothing has grown within the 40-feet ring for 100 years. Supposedly, it is where the devil walks in circles on certain nights, thinking of ways to bring his evil into this world. It appears that a journalist from the Greensboro paper spent the night in a tack smack in the middle of it with his 2 dogs to disprove the story. The reporter stayed the night, though he reported hearing ghostly footsteps circling his tent. So, what is causing all this? The devil. Duh. Now we have the hum. The hum is a name given to widespread reports of persistent and invasive low-frequency humming, rumbling, or droning noise audible to many people but not all people. Now, in late 2011, residents of Windsor, Ontario began reporting a low droning vibration, sometimes loud enough to be irritating. Now, one evening in 2012 saw 22,000 reports to officials. It's estimated that the sound was emanating from Zug Island, a heavily industrialized section of River Rouge, Rouge, and Canadian officials requested US assistance in determining the source, but local authorities were obstructed by official refusals to allow access to the island. A steel mill operated by US Steel was the possible cause, but officials stated that no new equipment had been installed or activated around the time that the noises became noticeable. Then there's the Teos hum. A study into the Teos hum in the early 1990s in Teos, New Mexico, indicated that at least 2% could hear it, and each hearer at a different frequency between 32 Hz and 80 Hz. Now, it seemed possible for the hearers to move away from it, with one hearer of the Teos hum reporting its range was 30 miles. Now, what was causing this? We don't know, and again, I need to know. On to the Oak Money Pit. The Oak Island Money Pit is a mysterious site on Nova Scotia's Oak Island that has long been rumored to contain buried treasure. The legend of the Money Pit dates back to 1795, and what began as an innocent exploration quickly became a massive treasure hunt, with hundreds of searchers excavating the island for over 200 years. The Money Pit has been dug down more than 200 feet, but many believe the treasure lies much more deep as 500 feet. Now, as diggers have gone deeper, they've encountered multiple booby traps, such as flood tunnels and stone plugs designed to protect whatever lies at the bottom. So far, the only artifacts that have been discovered are 2 links of gold chain and a stone inscribed with the letters VI and C, which some believe stands for Viva Cristo. Now, despite these discoveries, the mystery of Money Pit remains unsolved. Many believe it contains a great treasure, while others think it may be a hoax. While hundreds of theories have been proposed, from hidden pirate booty to ancient Native American artifacts, no one knows what lies at the bottom of Oak Island Money Pit, and I'm not sure we ever will. Up next is the Well of Sacrifice. At the ancient Mayan site of the Chichen Itza, a sacred cenote known as the Well of Sacrifice, it was used for offerings and sacrifices, including human victims, as part of religious ceremonies to appease the gods. As Friar Diego de Lindana observed in 1566 after visiting Chichen Itza, into this well they have had and then had the custom of throwing men alive as a sacrifice to the gods in times of drought, and they believe that they did not die, though they never saw them again. They also threw into a great many other things, like precious stones and things which they prized. And so, if this country had possessed gold, it would be this well that would have a great part of it. Now, Edward Herbert Thompson dredged the cenote from 1904 to 1910, and he recovered artifacts of gold, jade, pottery, and incense, as well as human remains. And lastly, we have the Zone of Silence. The Zone of Silence is a spot in the Mapimi Biosphere Reserve in Durango, Mexico, where radio and TV signals allegedly do not work. The name was only assigned to this place in 1966 when oil company Pemex sent some people to explore the area. The expedition leader, Augusto Harry de la Pena, encountered problems with his radio, giving it the name. In 1970, an American missile fired from the White Sands Missile Base somehow went off course and landed right in the middle of the reserve, 400 miles south of its intended target. Since then, similar stories have been reported by residents and tourists alike. In the 1930s, a Mexican pilot named Francisco Sabera said that his radio failed to function when flying over the zone. Now, aside from radio signals, telecommunication signals also seem to fall within this area. There are also reports that compasses turn out of control when positioned near the stone on the ground. Large meteorites also landed near the Zone of Silence, and several theories have been made trying to explain these phenomena, but people think it has something to do with some sort of paranormal activity.
And we're starting off this list with what has been dubbed the Lover's Lane case. In 1990, a young couple, Cheryl Henry, 22, and Andy Atkinson, 21, headed out to spend the night together, but they were never seen alive again. Their bodies were found the next day in a wooded area in West Houston known as Lover's Lane. The scene was pretty horrific. There were slash wounds to both of their necks. Andy was found tied to a tree, and Cheryl was found underneath a collapsed fence. Authorities were able to take DNA samples of whoever the assailant was, but they were never able to match it to anyone, meaning most likely this guy had no criminal record. And I do say guy because of the type of DNA they obtained. Over 30 years later, this case has sadly never been solved, and whoever's responsible could still be roaming around out there. The Amber Hagerman case. Amber Hagerman, a 9-year-old girl from Arlington, Texas, was at her grandparents' grandparents' house on January 13th, 1996. Her and her younger brother were out playing. Amber was on her bicycle and she started riding further and further down the road towards a grocery store. Her brother decided to turn back, but Amber never came back. She'd been taken by a man in a black van in the grocery store parking lot. There was only one witness to her abduction. An intense search effort began, with the community rallying together and law enforcement agencies mobilizing to try and find her. Sadly though, 4 days after her abduction, Amber's body was discovered in a local creek, not a long way from where she was abducted. What makes this case extra tragic is the fact that the assailant has never been found. This tragedy led Amber's mother, Donna Norris, to help establish the Amber Alert system, though, an emergency notification system designed to rapidly disseminate information about abductions to law enforcement agencies, media outlets, and the general public. That's that little ringer thing you get on your phone, the little update. The Amber Alert system has since been adopted and implemented in numerous countries around the world. So if there's anything good that came out of the case, it's that. Next up we have the Killing Fields. This is a stretch of land located in League City near Interstate 45, where numerous bodies have been discovered over the years, leading to one of the most haunting and perplexing mysteries in the state's history. Since the 1970s, law enforcement authorities have uncovered the remains of multiple victims in this desolate area, earning it the chilling nickname. The identity of the assailant or assailants responsible for these deaths remain unknown, and whose victims were primarily young women. Despite extensive investigations, the authorities have struggled to piece together the puzzle and bring the perpetrators to justice. Various theories and speculations have of course emerged over the years, ranging from the involvement of multiple assailants to potential connections with other unsolved crimes in the region. The families of the victims, as well as dedicated investigators, persistently seek answers, hoping to one day unveil the truth and find a bit of closure. The Phantom of Texarkana. The Phantom of Texarkana. Back in the spring of 1946, a series of violent attacks happened in a 10-week time span. Whoever this creep was, they wreaked havoc in the town of Texarkana, going on a rampage of terror. He operated at nighttime, targeting mostly young couples who were just minding their own business, parked in the dark corners of the town. There have been 8 victims, and 5 of which lost their lives. Law enforcement went into overdrive trying to catch this elusive boogeyman, but he managed to slip through their fingers every single time. The whole town was on edge, and folks were locking their doors, looking over their shoulders. The media ate it up, too, referring to it as the Texarkana Moonlight Murders, and the story spread far and wide, making this a pretty infamous case. The Phantom vanished as quickly as he appeared, though, leaving the town and its residents in a state of shock, confusion. Decades have passed, and his true identity still remains a mystery. The Icebox. In June of 1965, the residents of Houston, Texas were left in shock and confusion when the lifeless bodies of Fred and Edwina Rogers were discovered inside their own home. But what made this case truly macabre was the manner in which their bodies were found. They had been stuffed inside the family's refrigerator. The horrifying nature of the crime, coupled with the absence of any clear motive or suspects, has propelled the case into this realm of mystery. Investigations into the Icebox case were met with numerous baffling elements. The lack of forced entry suggested that the assailant was either known to the victims or possessed an intricate knowledge of their routines. The home had also been meticulously cleaned after the attack, which made, gathering up evidence pretty difficult. And there was also this absence of a clear motive, which really added another layer of intrigue to it, leaving the investigators grasping at straws for answers. Over the years, theories surrounding the Icebox case have circulated. Some speculate that the crime was a result of a family dispute, while others entertain the possibility that someone could have been hired to commit the act. And then, of course, there are those who hypothesize that the assailant may have simply been a deranged individual who really had no motive and attacked them completely at random. At number 5 on the list, we have the televangelist bomber. This disturbing case began back in January of 1990 when a mysterious package was sent to Lakewood Church in Houston. The daughter of Pastor John Osteen opened the package and it exploded. Luckily, she survived, but received third-degree burns and cuts to her legs and abdomen. In April of that same year, a second package was sent. This one to the Christian Broadcasting Network in Virginia, where a security guard named Scott Sheepers almost lost his life. The package had looked suspicious, and the TV station had received death threats before, so they were on pretty high alert in general. They put the package through an x-ray machine. Sheepers didn't spot anything out of the ordinary at first, but something about it still seemed off to him. He went to cut into part of the box before taking a couple steps back, at which point the package exploded and sending Sheepers flying to the floor. He was transported to the hospital where shrapnel was removed from his leg and he did survive. Both packages had been sent from Fayetteville, North Carolina. Until this day, the identity of the sender has never been found. Number 4, Sam Bass's treasure. Alright, Sam Bass was this notorious outlaw during the late 1800s. He was known for his daring train robberies. According to the lore, Bass and his gang managed to accumulate quite a substantial fortune through their criminal activities, amassing a hidden treasure that till this day has never been fully recovered. The whereabouts of Bass's treasure has remained a mystery, fueling countless treasure hunting expeditions and inspiring countless stories and speculations. Many believe that Bass buried his loot in various locations across Texas, particularly in the areas around Denton where he operated. Some claim that Bass left cryptic clues and treasure maps, teasing treasure hunters with the possibility of finding his hidden riches. Over the years, numerous treasure seekers have dedicated themselves to try and unravel the secrets of the whereabouts of his treasure. They have combed through historical records, studied old maps, and explored the Texas landscape in search of his stash. Despite their efforts though, the treasure has never been found. It's kind of like a Western version of One Piece. I love it. The thing is though, I think if someone did find it, would they report it? Or would they just kind of like keep it to themselves? I don't know. Maybe someone has found it. At number 3, we have the case of Lori Ruff. Lori Ruff was this woman with a seemingly ordinary existence, although she was always rather secretive about her past. And her husband, Blake Ruff, had a lot of questions, and as it would turn out, she wasn't exactly who she seemed. In 2010, she ended up taking her secrets to the grave after taking her own life, leaving behind a trail of these perplexing clues and unanswered questions. Blake Ruff discovered a lockbox in her closet that only added to his confusion surrounding her past. It seemed as if Lori previously went by the name Becky Sue Turner. But Becky Sue Turner was the name of a girl who had died in a house fire back in 1971. So Ruff was left in kind of utter shock, confusion. Who was this woman he'd married back in 2003? Investigators were on the case, and as it turned out, Becky wasn't her only other name. Lori was actually born as Kimberly McLean, who had gone missing in 1986. She had run away from home at 18 years old. The question still remains though, why did she leave home and how did she acquire the birth certificate of a girl who died in 1971. At number 2, we have the Marfa Lights. The mystery surrounding the Texas Marfa Lights has fascinated locals and visitors alike for decades. Nestled in the remote desert landscape near the town of Marfa, these unexplained phenomena manifest as strange floating orbs of light that appear in the night sky. Witnesses have described them as glowing orbs of various colors ranging from white, yellow to blue and red. The lights often dance and dart and hover in the distance, defying all conventional explanations. Numerous theories have been proposed, of course, to explain the origin of these lights, but none of them have actually been able to fully unravel it. Some speculate that they are the result of natural occurrences like atmospheric gases or reflections from distant headlights. Others attribute them, of course, to supernatural or extraterrestrial origin, believing that they are the work of ghosts or alien visitations. Skeptics argue that the lights are simply the, product of illusions or, misinterpretations. But there's quite the allure behind it, and it's led to the establishment of viewing areas and research centers dedicated to studying and observing them. Scientists, paranormal enthusiasts, and curious visitors flock to the region in search of answers. That's something I'd like to see. I might have to take a trip to Texas, find some treasure, see some cool lights. It'll be a good time. And finally, we have the Levelland UFO case. This case stands as one of the most compelling incidents in the history of unidentified flying objects, and unfolded on the night of November 2nd, 1957 in Levelland, Texas, when the multiple witnesses reported encountering a series of bizarre events involving unidentified flying aircraft or aircrafts. Throughout the night, several motorists reported their vehicles stalling and electrical systems failing as they observed a large, almost egg-shaped object hovering in the vicinity. The witnesses described the craft emanating a blinding light and this intense heat. The accounts of the Levelland UFO sightings were remarkably consistent too, with witnesses from different locations reporting similar experiences. Law enforcement officers and local authorities were flooded with these reports throughout the night, which really adds to the credibility of the events. However, when law enforcement officers did arrive on the scenes, the crafts had already disappeared. This case attracted the attention of the United States Air Force, leading to an investigation by Project Blue Book, the official US government program tasked with studying UFO reports. Despite their efforts though, no definitive explanation was ever provided. Skeptics have offered theories ranging from, again, atmospheric phenomena to maybe electrical disturbances, but others believe this is genuine extraterrestrial encounter. But others still believe it's aliens, which I also like that idea a lot more. There's just this consistency and the number of witnesses, which again, very interesting.